Schizophrenics of Reddit, what is the scariest hallucination, visually or audibly, that you have ever experienced? Want to be featured in my videos? Become a patron at the Patreon link in the description. Don't forget to subscribe for new videos every day. Had a patient with Lewy body dementia, not schizophrenia, but produced horrific hallucinations. I was working knock shift, 10 PM to 6 AM, and my office was close to her room. She would scream and scream and scream all night long. I would go and sit with her and ask her if something was scaring her. She saw people waiting in the shadows in the corner of her room. She heard them laughing, saw their faces contorting. She felt rats crawling up and down her body, felt them crawling into her and raping her, biting her from the inside, then coming out of her eyes. She was still pretty with it and you were able to have lucid conversations with her. Had a sense of humor like you wouldn't believe. She knew what she was experiencing were hallucinations, but that didn't make them any less real to her. Eventually she stopped being able to discern what was real and what wasn't. She died a few months ago. I worked with her for 2 years and miss her every damn day. But I'm grateful that she is no longer suffering. Lewy body dementia is no joke. I work in a physical therapy clinic. We had a patient come in who was diagnosed with LBD while she was being treated. She was convinced that there were 2 men who were driving an hour every night to kick her in the knees, knee pain being why she was in the clinic, osteoarthritis with no sign of trauma. She was also convinced they were feeding her dog poison, poking holes in her shoes and throwing away her paperwork. Really sweet lady. Seemed completely lucid until she'd start to talk about those 2 men. She told us that when she got her diagnosis that she couldn't figure out why the doctor would say she had that. She couldn't connect how absurd her hallucinations were and 100% believed they were real. Edit. Should have been more careful with my wording. The lady thought they were poisoning her dog, who was completely healthy. Fortunately, the scariest I've ever had is just people calling my name from another room when I know I'm the only person in the house. My audible hallucinations don't have a great vocabulary, and most of the time just sound like someone doing jazz scat, which is kind of annoying and makes it hard to sleep. Visually, I'll sometimes see people standing in windows who aren't there on a second glance, or small shadows darting around like mice. I'm extremely fortunate that my symptoms are relatively mild. First off, I just wanna say I have hallucinations categorized as psychosis instead of schizophrenia. They do this when your symptoms don't quite line up with aren't bad enough for the regular diagnosis. And I can tell you I have actually pissed myself in fear from some of my hallucinations. I can't even imagine how bad it must be for people whose symptoms line up with schizophrenia. As for my scariest hallucination, it will always be my first visual hallucination. I was in school, like 10th grade, and I'd heard voices for a bit now, to the point that I was almost getting used to the fact that I hear things others don't. I remember getting up from my desk to use the toilet, and when I got out of the room, I see this man with no face, just standing there facing me. At first I just thought my eyes were messing with me, so I blink a couple times, shake my head a little bit, and look back, and he's gone. No way he could have moved in those empty, silent hallways without me hearing it, but he's gone. So I just go to the bathroom, thinking it's kinda weird, but not thinking too much about it. I even joked with myself that now I'm seeing things too, haha. But when I got to the bathroom, he's there again, standing in the doorway. I stop and just kind of stare for a second, more curious than anything. Then I think, well, maybe he's just wearing a mask or something, and I ask if he can move over and let me in the bathroom. But then this other kid comes out and asks who I'm talking to, right as he walks through the faceless guy. I just stand there, speechless, cause what do you say in that situation? The kid looks at me like I'm weird, but then just walks away. The dude with no face moves over to let me by, and I give him as wide a berth as I can while I go in, never taking my eyes off him. He followed me into the bathroom, and a few seconds later this girl walks in. And I begin telling her that she's in the wrong bathroom, I'm a guy FWI, when I notice that she doesn't have a face either. They both begin walking towards me, and at that point I'm pretty damn scared, so I go and hide in one of the stalls and bawl my eyes out, because at this point I realize that I'm pretty much just crazy. I didn't come out until the staff came and talked me into it. The 2 of them, the guy and the girl, show up every now and again. Note, I've since graduated and moved away from there, but they still show up wherever I am, but they never do anything, so I don't know what to make of it. But that first time scared the living shit out of me. Schizoaffective, bipolar subtype. It's not a specific hallucination, but sometimes I have very vivid memories of things that didn't happen, and they make me second guess every single thing that I can remember or know, because if my memory failed me once, why wouldn't it fail me twice? And then everything spirals downwards. Edit. I simply can't see the more recent comments. If you have any questions, DM me. My GF's ex-roommate was the same. A lot of times he asked her if some conversations actually happened. He also imagined that we broke up because of him and things like that. I often heard him talking in the kitchen when he was cooking all by himself. Do you know if this is also the case for you? Wish you all the best. I frequently talk to myself, but more often than not I'm aware of it. It just feels right to vocalize my thoughts to no one. The cognitive dissonance is strong, especially when my medication is effective at toning down my symptoms but not get rid of them. A lot of times people do things simply because it feels right or wrong. I get that too, but sometimes what I feel is right or wrong isn't compatible with the truth, and my conscience knows it, but I don't feel any less strongly about it. As an example, imagine your food is covered in poop, but you know the poop isn't real. However, it looks and smells just like poop. It feels very real even though you know there's no poop. It wouldn't be any less disgusting for you to eat it, because your feelings are very true even if your perception isn't. One of the veins in my eye was actually a worm that was eating my brain, and that's why I had headaches. Also, random sharp pains and itches are bugs crawling all over my skin, trapped in my shoes, etc. I double check my shoes every time I put them on with a flashlight, but still have to take them off occasionally to check. My friend in college was schizophrenic. We were once hanging out in his dorm room at night, maybe 11 PM midnight, and he got up to go to the bathroom. He opened the door and stopped, staring at the empty hallway. He asked me to come to the door and tell him if something seemed weird. I walk up to the door and see nothing strange in the hall and tell him so. He asks me if I can hear something. I say no. He said he heard muffled crying or arguing or something coming from down the hall, and he saw a pitch black hallway when it was actually fully lit. He said the hall was black, not just dark or dimly lit. At this point he is shaking and I'm terrified because I don't know he's sick. We're both on the verge of tears. I'm not even sure he knew he was sick at the time. I ended up walking him to the bathroom and then spending the night in his room because he could still hear someone crying in the hall. I thought for the longest time he was pulling my leg, but he ended up going to therapy and getting on meds very shortly after that night, so it was a terrifying and very real moment for him too. I had a patient with schizophrenia, full visual and auditory hallucinations, off of his meds and screaming in public. Demons were coming out of the ground trying to grab him. They were yelling at him various obscene things. Weird part was that once we are on scene, he calmed down and recognized the uniforms. Fully cooperative. But that was an interesting patient history. Are you having hallucinations? Yup, describes them in detail. So how are you so calm right now? This is normal when I am off my meds and I know I am in an ambulance. This was normal for him. I have psychosis and it usually is worst when I'm alone or at night. Doubly so if I'm alone at night. When I was house training my puppy, I had him outside at 3 AM. And I saw what looked like the KKK and some witches having a scenes. I then heard whispers mentioning killing and saw the group start walking up the street towards my house. Thankfully, that's the worst it's ever been. I do still have minor fleeting hallucinations when I'm stressed, but it's more like seeing a shadow out of the corner of my eye and is much easier to ignore. Somebody I knew back in high school had schizophrenia, but was taking medication for it. She accidentally skipped a dose once and she came to school hysterical that she didn't want to go back home because she heard someone chewing human meat under her bed. Human meat? How does one even know what that sounds like? The same way you just know things in dreams, in ways that don't make sense in the waking world. You mistake schizophrenia for being like reality. In reality, you'd hear a noise, then recognize what it is or figure out what it is. In schizophrenia, hallucinations are spontaneous knowledge that come all at once. You know what you are hearing and its implication. It's not like you hear a knock and use deductive reasoning to figure out it's a person buried between your walls. You simply know that there is a dead person in the walls knocking on them, trying to come out. Brother is schizophrenic and had insane hallucinations for about a year before I could get him help. He constantly believed people were assaulting him, trying to rape him and trying to kill him. On one occasion he ran so long to get away from them he was admitted into the hospital for heat exhaustion. He didn't understand why we wouldn't help him and would lash out at us. He's now severely medicated and nowhere near the person he once was. I'm prone to occasional psychotic episodes. No formal diagnosis has been made to include this. I have previously been diagnosed with BPD, but it's not really common to have episodes of psychosis with BPD, so I'm waiting to be re-evaluated. I was admitted to the crisis ward in November because I was 100% convinced my whole body was rotting from the inside out. I was decomposing from within and it was spreading outward to my extremities. This was terrifying for me, not because I was afraid of dying but because no one believed me that I was decomposing. No one saw it as an issue, and realizing that my reality is not reality was so traumatic and isolating. I'm really not looking forward to the next inevitable episode. Thank you for watching. Smash that like button like it's a thick booty. And don't forget to subscribe to okpjdark if you like nice things, like new videos every day. See you tomorrow.